3 Vienna sausages, heavy on a tomato puree, slice of bread and butter on a paper disc.
And more than ample portion of succotash. Don't leave out the succotash.
Yeah. You know, when you get a good meal like that and as good a service as Olive gives you, you don't mind leaving a generous tip.
Did you leave a tip?
Well, yeah, a quarter.
I did too.
A quarter?
Yeah.
Well, Andy, didn't you see me put a quarter down? That was supposed to be for the both of us.
Maybe don't. Oh, what the heck's just a quarter?
Well, no, Andy, that's just throwing money away. Look, I'll just run back over there and put my hat down on one of the quarters and get it back.
Honey, that's not necessary. Poor old Olive's a widow with 4 children. She can use it.
Oh, yeah. I forgot about that. Bless her heart. Let's just let her keep it.
You're all heart. You know that, Barn?
Good morning, Barney.
Oh, nice day, huh?
Say, you and Andy left an extra quarter yesterday. I'm sure it was a mistake.
What do you mean a mistake? That was your tip.
2 quarters? But you never in your life.
Olive, who do you think you're dealing with? A couple of pikers? You got yourself a half a C tip. Enjoy it.
I appreciate it.
Barney was a little slow to pick up on compassion, wasn't he? And expressing it. Sometimes we are too. And today we're going to look at a passage of Scripture as we continue our series of messages on the life of David. We've been looking at scenes going through David's life that become a defining moment. And today we're going to look at a very touching scene in David's life that will forever define him as one of the most compassionate and kind men in the Old Testament. We're going to pick up our story today in 2 Samuel 9, and you can follow along on the PowerPoint. Here we go. One day, David asked, "Is anyone in Saul's family still alive? Anyone to whom I can show kindness for Jonathan's sake?" Now, he asked that question before we're going further. And keep in mind that King Saul became David's enemy because God had anointed David to be the next king while Saul was still king. And that didn't go well with King Saul. So Saul went after David, and David became a fugitive as King Saul tried to kill him time and time again. But King Saul had a son named Jonathan. And Jonathan and David, as we saw in another message, became best friends. And they made a promise to each other that whoever would die first, that the other one would take care of any children or family members that he might have. And so they make that promise. But years go by. Jonathan and David separate simply because of King Saul. And after a while, Jonathan dies. And David is now king. Saul is out of the picture. He's now king. Things are going great for him at this point in his life. But he says, "Is there anyone whom I can show kindness for Jonathan's sake?" And he summoned a man named Ziba, who had been one of Saul's servants. "Are you Ziba?" the king asked. "Yes, sir, I am," Ziba replied. Let's read on. The king then asked him, "Is anyone still alive from Saul's family?" He's not aware of any descendants, any family members, but he's searching, he's seeking, he's trying to find out. "If so, I want to show God's kindness to them." Ziba replied, "Yes, one of Jonathan's sons is still alive. He is crippled in both feet. Where is he? The king asked. In Lodabar, Ziba told him, at the home of Machir, son of Amiel. Now, Lodabar simply means in the Hebrew, no pasture. It was a desolate wasteland. And I think it was just kind of symbolic for the people who lived there. And certainly we're going to see it was for Jonathan's son named Mephilbosheth. So let's read on. So David sent for him and brought him from Machir's home. His name was Mephilbosheth. You don't have any idea how many times I practiced saying that word this week. Don't blow it. Don't stumble over it. You know, be careful what comes out. All right. He was Jonathan's son and Saul's grandson. When he came to David, he bowed low to the ground in deep respect. David said, "Greetings, Mephilbosheth." Mephilbosheth replied, "I am your servant." Now, I'm confident that this crippled boy, who was crippled at the age of 5 when they were going off to, when war was going on and they were trying to escape for their lives, and he is dropped by a nurse, and he never recovers. And so he's a crippled. He's dependent upon people. And now somebody says, David's asking for you. Well, he doesn't know anything about that promise. All he knows is, you know, my grandfather, King Saul, gave David a horrible time. And David's now king, and he may just be cleaning house, making certain there's no threats to the throne. I think he realizes his life is over. I think he thinks this is it, because we're going to read on and see how he responds. Next verse. "Don't be afraid," David said. "I intend to show kindness to you because of my promise to your father Jonathan. I will give you all the property that once belonged to your grandfather Saul, and you will eat here with me at the king's table." See what David does. He goes the extra mile. He doesn't just show kindness and say, "Hey, I'm going to let you live. If you need anything, give me a call. I'll send you some money, or I can send somebody to go over and help you if there's something you need. If you need some repairs on your house or the roof replaced, I'll send somebody or I'll pay for it." And he said, "Man, you're going to come live with me. You're going to eat every meal with me at my table." Man, that's compassion. That's kindness. Let's read on. Mephilbosheth bowed respectfully and exclaimed, "Who is your servant that you should show such kindness to a dead dog like me?" He said, "I don't really have a life. I never have, and I just figured I was dead when I came in here." But that's not the case, as we read. Then the king summoned Saul's servant Ziba and said, "I have given your master's grandson everything that belonged to Saul and his family." Folks, this is a huge, huge commitment and an investment that David makes on behalf of a promise he made to his best friend. His friend Jonathan has been dead now for some time. Nobody is alive that ever knew about that promise, but David remembered it, and he's going to honor it. And he doesn't just honor it, he honors it in a big, big way. Let's read verse 10. "You and your sons and servants are to farm the land for him, to produce food for your master's household. But Mephilbosheth, your master's grandson, will eat here at my table." Now look at the number of people that are moving in here that David has promised to care for and show compassion and kindness to. Ziba had 15 sons and 20 servants. How would you like those people moving in with you and say, "Who's going to pay for this food bill, grocery bill?" Greetings, you are. Okay, next verse. Ziba replied, "Yes, my lord the king. I am your servant. I'll do all that you have commanded. And from that time on, Mephilbosheth ate regularly at David's table like one of the king's own sons. Only his immediate family would do that. But not Mephilbosheth. Because David was a man of compassion. And this scene defines him as that man of God, a man after God's own heart, full of compassion and kindness. The words that are used to describe how God deals with us. We have any more verses to carry? I thought so. I thought we had a couple more. Mephilbosheth had a young son named Micah. From then on, all the members of Ziba's household were Mephibosheth's servants. And Mephibosheth, who was crippled in both feet, lived in Jerusalem and ate regularly at the king's table. We're going to learn some important lessons about compassion today. And it's my prayer that you and I will be defined as having the heart of God, showing compassion and kindness. This message is huge because what is said here today from God's Word becomes foundational for what we're going to start in September with our kickoff on the 13th of September. It's the first Sunday after Labor Day. We're going to start a series of messages for 10 weeks. That'll take us up to Thanksgiving. Wow, years go by fast, don't they? And it's entitled 100 Happy People. And during those weeks, we're going to have small group studies going along with it on Sunday nights. You're going to be challenged and held accountable for how you can reach out and minister to other people around you in the name of Jesus Christ. How you can serve others. And that's where real joy is found. Not just saying, God, make me happy. Send somebody into my life to make me happy. And it's not just making other people happy, but it's showing compassion and kindness. Because when you do that, these people will get to see what the heart of God is really like. And so we're so excited about it. We hope you'll bring your friends, invite someone to come, get connected this fall. 100 Happy People starting September 13th. And Sunday nights we're going to follow up with small group studies. I'm excited about it. And I just ask for your support. And I just ask that you be enthused and excited and share that, an invitation with those around you. And get on board. Because that's what David did. He was a man of compassion and kindness. Now, there are some key lessons for us today that we want to talk about from this passage if you're filling in your outline. So here we go today. Number one, understand compassion is more than just making promises. It's becoming a promise keeper. It's more than making idle promises. It's becoming a promise keeper. That was David. He made a promise years earlier under totally different circumstances. But now he's going to honor it because he doesn't take his promises lightly. Even when no one else is around to hold him accountable, he's going to honor his word to his friend Jonathan long after Jonathan has died. Are you a promise keeper? In the movie, I think it's called Crossfire Trail, based upon an old book written originally back in the 50s. The movie was made about not too many years ago. It's about a man who travels hundreds of miles to honor and to keep his promise to a dying man. And in so doing, it's a Western movie, he just disrupts all the plans that the bad guy has in the movie. And near the end, when this man shows up to keep his promise, he says, what kind of dinosaur would travel hundreds of miles to keep his promise to a dying man? Great question. Do we just make promises? Let's become promise keepers. When we say, hey, I'll call you back, you call back. When you say, hey, I'll be there at noon tomorrow, you show up on time. When you say, hey, I'll pay you next Friday on payday, you pay them next Friday on payday. But here's what happens. Most of us, when we make the promise, do not intend to become a promise breaker. Some people do, obviously. But most of you, I think everyone here today would say, when I make a promise, I intend to keep it. But guess what happens? Life happens. Circumstances totally change from when that promise was first made. You know, when you're in the showroom and you're looking at this shiny new car, and they take you over to the office right next to it, and they sit you down, and you promise you will make that payment the first of every month for the next 60 months or 72 months, and it's getting longer all the time, but whatever, you promise. If it takes forever, I'll make that payment on the first of the month. It's not hard to make that promise under those circumstances. Man, that's a beautiful car. But guess what happens? Life happens. And 4 years later, when you've got over 100,000 miles in the car and it's beat up and it has all kinds of problems and the power windows aren't working and the power locks don't work and very few things do work, it's really hard to honor that promise. You know, it's easy to promise a person when you're on the romantic banks of Shoal Creek under a star-filled sky at night, and you say, honey, I love you, and I'll be faithful to you forever for the rest of my life. But you know what happens? Babies happen. And after babies and more babies, and under a pile of dirty diapers and a mountain of unpaid bills, couples begin to say, you know, it's really hard to keep my promise. He comes back to her. He's cheated on her time and time again. He promises he'll be faithful this time. He's so sorry. What's she do? He broke his. Will she break hers? You know, when we make those commitments to each other, there's something we kind of gloss over, but it says, for better and for richer, for good health and better health, for good times and better times, I'll take you. Isn't that how it reads? It should for some people, because they don't take them for worse, for poor, and sickness. But that's a promise we make. Are we just promise makers? Or will we become a promise keeper? Second lesson here about compassion, and this is a key one if you're looking here, filling in. Compassion is more than reacting to needs. Get this, it's more than reacting to needs. It's seeking out those needs. Think about this. David could have said, you know, if any of Jonathan's family ever shows up, I'll show him some compassion and kindness. I don't have any ill will against his family. I don't know of any. Nobody around me seems to know of any. But he really went out of his way. He went and got one of Saul's servants, and he says, can you possibly see if there's anybody in Saul's family still left that I can show compassion and kindness to? You know, a lot of us, if we have somebody come and say, hey, hey, I need some help. Can you give me some money? Or, hey, it'd be a whole lot better if we can spot that so we don't put that person in that situation, and we're sensitive enough so that we can seek it out before they come to us, and we just have to react to an immediate situation. Let me give you an example. One day, a preacher was in the elevator of a hospital. Know this very well. And there in the elevator was a nurse wheeling out a young mother holding a newborn baby in her lap. Beside her was her husband, obviously, and about a 4-year-old girl. Everybody getting on the elevator, oohed and hard. Oh, that baby is so cute. That baby is so precious. Oh, taking the baby home. Oh, how exciting. One of the floors, it stopped, and another lady got on, very poised, and she saw the people oohing and ahhing and carrying on, and she immediately sized up the situation, and she said, taking your new baby home? Yeah. She says, oh, baby's beautiful. Then she knelt down to the 4-year-old girl, and she said, wow, that makes you really special, doesn't it? That baby is so lucky to have a big sister like you. You are so pretty. I know you're smart, and I know she's going to look to you, and she's going to want to be like you as she grows up. I realized everybody in that elevator had missed it, but that one lady. That happens to me all the time. I miss it until it's too late, and you just kind of react to situations. Well, when we do that series on 100 Happy People, you're going to have to seek out and not just react, but seek out people that you can minister to, that you can bring some joy into their life as you meet some genuine needs. And I don't know about you, but I'm already praying, saying, God, help me to become a sensitive person. Help me to become sensitive to the needs of people around me. Man, that is just so important. Came across this article written by a college student. We got a lot of college students here, and they're getting ready to leave this week. A lot of ours are. And this one college student writes, says, during my second month of school, I was breezing through a pop quiz when I came to an unusual question. The last question read, what is the first name of the woman who cleans this school? Oh, I'd seen the woman cleaning, but I had no idea what her name was. How was I expected to know her name? So I left it blank, obviously. Before I handed in the test, another student raised his hand and asked, will this last question count towards our grade? Absolutely, said the professor. In your careers, you'll meet many people. You'll be tempted to overlook some that you don't think are very important. If you haven't learned in this class, all are significant. Everyone deserves your attention and care. And you will always have enough time to smile and say, hi, my name is such and such. What's your name? Thank you for cleaning. If you haven't learned that, then you've learned nothing at all. I don't know. It didn't give the details as to what college that was, who the professor was, what careers we're talking about here. But it's true, and you know what? It convicted me. I can get so focused, I can get so zeroed in on what has to be done, and I need to do this, do that. And we can just breeze, unintentional, but we can just breeze through life oblivious to the needs of people all around us. Compassion, it's more than reacting. It's seeking out those needs. Number 3, here we go. We have a first scripture first, don't we? James 2, yeah. Thought I forgot. I did. All right, suppose you see a brother or a sister who has no food or clothing, and you say, goodbye, have a good day, stay warm and eat well. But then you don't give that person any food or clothing. What good does that do? So you see, faith by itself isn't enough unless it produces good deeds. It is dead and useless. So James says, don't just talk a good story, show it. And be sensitive to the needs. They're all around us. We just open our eyes and our hearts to it. Now we're ready for point 3. Compassion is more than giving money. It's building relationships. This is the hard part, isn't it? This is the hard part because the easiest thing in the world is to give our money. Yeah, sure. And we think when we've done that, we have excused ourselves from any more responsibility. But in essence, money's the easy part. David could have said, hey, I tell you what, if there's anyone left in Saul's family, any children of Jonathan's, I tell you what, I'd like to send them a Christmas card and put a $100 bill in it. I'd like to give them a gift card to Walmart or something. I'd like to send them a care package, some food and some clothes. You know, I'd like to remember their birthday. That would be pretty nice, wouldn't it? But David got involved. He didn't know who this guy was. He just knew he made a promise, and he wanted to honor it in a big way. And he brings this boy that's crippled to eat every meal with him at his table. Take care of him and all the other servants and family members of Ziba and such. You got dozens and dozens of people. You take part of the land that's now yours as king, and you say, it was Saul's originally, I'm going to give it all back to you. Folks, it's huge. He does give his money in a big way, but he gives more than that. He just shares his whole life, his whole world. It's an invitation to come into my world. Those relationships are tough. Because it never fails when people need you. It's at the most inopportune time. They're moving, and man, you got plans. They need you now, and you're so tired. And yet God calls us, not just to give money, but to build relationships that would honor him. Show that compassion and that kindness. Will you commit to that? 4th lesson, and this is huge. Here's what it's all about. Compassion is more than just who you are. Don't just say, well, you know, it's just my nature to be a kind person. That guy's just a kind person. No, it's not about who you are and who I am. It's based upon a promise-keeping God. You know why David honored that promise when it would cost him so much? Yeah, it's because he followed God. And God's a promise keeper. Look at Deuteronomy chapter 7, verse 9. Understand, therefore, that the Lord your God is indeed God. He is the faithful God who keeps his covenant, his promises for 1,000 generations and lavishes his unfailing love on those who love him and obey his commands. God's a promise keeper. Now, we could say this is the end of the story, and it would be a beautiful, touching story. It gets even better. Years later, when Absalom, David's son, is rebelling against him, David has to flee Jerusalem because he doesn't want to fight and kill his own son. And so he leaves, and he tells everybody, flee with him. Later, as he's left, he asks Ziba, hey, where's Mephilbosheth? He said, I tried to get him to come, but he didn't want to come because he thinks you might get killed. And you might kill each other, you and Absalom, and he'll get to become king. He's already living in the palace. He now wants to take over. David had to be crushed. And David comes back alive afterwards, and he finds Mephilbosheth, and he says, Mephilbosheth, why didn't you come? I wanted to, but Ziba wouldn't take me. So here's what we got. We got Ziba blaming Mephilbosheth, and maybe he wants to take over. And you got Mephilbosheth pointing his finger at Ziba and said, it's his fault. Isn't this just like, wouldn't this make a great movie, a plot where you're trying to figure out who's telling the truth? You know, this would be like a crime drama story. And you think, who's the culprit here? Who's the bad guy here? Guess what? Guess who it is? How many of you think it was Mephilbosheth, the bad guy? How many of you think it was Ziba? How many of you don't know? That's the correct answer for a change. That's why I raised my hand. Well, I raised them all three, I guess. But I meant to raise it on the last one. We really don't know. We really don't know. And you know, to David, guess what? It really didn't matter. Isn't that compassion? He could have kicked them both out and said, look, I'm sick and tired of you. I show all this, and you guys just take it for granted. It's never enough. And listen to me carefully. Many times, those you give the most to and help the most, sometimes, not always, sometimes they will stab you in the back, and they will turn on you, and they will hurt you deeply. But for David, it didn't matter. He followed God, and our God is a promise keeper. Man, it's a great day when we come to that point in our lives to say, you know, it really doesn't matter. I'm going to show kindness, compassion, irregardless of the consequences or the results. You know, Abraham understood the faithfulness of God. God told him, he said, look to the stars. If you can count them, you'll be able to count your descendants. It seemed like a stupid promise because he was an old man. He didn't have any children. But God had him take several animals and cut them in half, the carcasses, half over here, one animal after another, half over here, half over here, half over there. And then he told Abraham, walk between them. He said, because I am showing to you, I keep my promise. That was done in the Old Testament, that a person, when they gave their word, would honor it. And if they didn't, what happened to that animal being torn in two is what they wanted to happen to themselves if they ever broke their promise. Abraham looked to the heavens. I'm making a promise. You take those animals, you kill them, and you cut them in two. I want to be a picture as to my faithfulness and my commitment to you. Hosea, 700 years before Jesus was born, was commanded to take Gomer as a wife. Boy, I tell you, if her profession as a prostitute wouldn't do you in, her name would, wouldn't it? And, you know, he marries Gomer. And in time they have 3 children. But none of them are by Hosea. And one day she leaves him. And she finally hits rock bottom. And one day she's being sold on the auction block as a slave. And Hosea comes to buy her back. Did she deserve it? No. Wasn't a matter of deserving. It's just a matter of unbelievable kindness and grace and love. God said, that's the picture I have for my people. And that's what you and I are called to do. And it's a tough task, I understand. It's not easy, is it? But here's the thought I leave you with as we get ready to go into our decision time today. Here it is in a nutshell. You know who we are in the story, don't you? You and I, we're not David. We're Mephilbosheth. We've been crippled by sin. We've been separated from God. We've been his enemies because of our sin and our rebellion against him. And God comes to us. And he invites you and I to come and to sit at his table, to be a part of his family. We don't deserve it. But he does. because that's his heart. A heart of love and incredible kindness as he reaches out to you and I. Will you reach out to him as we stand and sing our invitation hymn?